So when it comes to investing in Pokemon cards, products, graded cards, there is so much that you need to consider, and also not to get overwhelmed with it, to be honest. The big thing when it comes to investments is everybody wants either quick profits, the biggest percentage bonus they've ever seen ever, and to be honest, social media has made it seem like not necessarily that it's possible for anybody, because it most definitely is, but it seems to be more possible for the lower end kind of entry to reach the profits of hundreds of thousands, sometimes even millions. Now, there's definitely a couple ways that you can go about investing. I'm going to run over some points that will help you decide either that you want to or what you actually want to go into. Now, a perfect one that I always like to go with to start with is dependent on, do you want short flips or do you want long flips? And basically that means a short-term investment or a long-term investment. And when it comes to the long-term, I'm not talking a year, 2 year. Sometimes you can get some nice ones that work like that, but we're talking maybe 5, 10, 15 years. If you look across the board when we go down these sets and you think everybody kind of knows or has heard about how expensive base set is. And that's, to be honest, very fine and obviously anything that is that old and still very relevant in today's market, of course, is going to be very expensive. You're looking in the late 1990s. There's a reason why they are expensive, and hence why Evolving Skies, X and Y isn't quite on that same level, because we've still got another 2 to 3 decades before that reaches the level. And that's, to be honest, to say if it even does get there. Now, we can look at a few products and think, okay, if we go into, for instance, something like Diamond and Pearl, even if you go to something like Black and White, I suppose, could be still quite expensive. And I think if you was to look at pricing, for instance, if we was to go into the Pokemon side here, and we go into, we'll just go into just generic Black and White. If you go again into products, you will be able to see the level of what we're dealing with here. If we go to prices high to low, what you'll find is a lot of the normal, so for instance, the X and Y Phantom Forces is priced, it's marketed at the moment at $2,000. We look then at an X and Y booster box, it's 1.5. If then we was to go, for instance, a little bit more specific, say we say Black and White and we go for Plasma Storm. Might not be anything on here because obviously things are still very much in the kind of thing, so you see out of stock completely. If we go to, would help if the booster box was even here. Let's try a different one. But this is what you want to kind of spend your time doing, because you're not, the big thing as well with investing is not necessarily just picking a product and going with it. You need the research to it as well. It's not good enough as such to just say, okay, I'm going to buy 6 boxes of Evolving Skies and pray they go up, because there could be the chance that they drop completely, as we can't see any booster boxes. So let's just go Black and White and see if we could type in booster boxes. They might not just be on here. They will be very expensive. That's booster boxes or booster box. Cosmic Eclipse was a little bit recent, to be honest. We've got Twilight Masquerade, we know that ain't that's Sun and Moon. By the looks of it then, it might not be that they're on here at all. So you might have to go to eBay or a different site. Sometimes they'll be on here, but for instance, if we was to look at then, we saw X and Y. Let's try that one just to see what sort of market we're looking at, because the big thing that you can see, so for instance, X and Y booster box case, I believe that is 5 boxes, I want to say, in one. But if we was to just pick one, so say Team Up, we know that one's got a massive come up. Obviously you want to look at the actual set itself, so that one was in, that's Sun and Moon, isn't it? So if we go up to the Team Up, you'll see it here. You want to check what cards are in it. That's going to be the biggest thing to start with. You make sure that you've gone through the list, because the biggest thing is, what are the chase cards? If there is none, likely chance it could go down still. If there is a big one, which more than likely is going to be at the end, for instance, a lot of people love the Team Up cards. The designs are fantastic, and I can imagine some, to be honest, quite a lot of them I can imagine will be quite expensive. Even £63 just for a standard one here. I can imagine we will find a lot of them being in that sort of price. For instance, if we go, I know full well this is the chase card, 765. So it makes it look more worth it when you are looking at a card like this. Now, when we look at the pricing, you want to be looking at the kind of gradual progression here. We know this has been out since quite a while. I can imagine X and Y, Sun and Moon was quite a while ago. We're looking at what, 178 in September. That was last year. Now up to about 2.4, coming in at the moment at about $3,000. You might be able to get cheaper elsewhere. Sometimes you can find yourself a deal. Always check everything when you are looking to actually purchase. If you've decided, I want to get a few team-up boxes, then make sure that you are going through the proper protocols. And to be honest, that is still a very high level. You can just go for the very much the cheaper options here. It's not always about the most expensive, the oldest sets you can get, because to be honest, we saw 151 boxes going for around about £60, give or take, for the reprint. Now, I've got 2 of them. It was the very first 2 sealed products I've ever bought. And you know what? I'm quite happy with it. It's very much in there as a very much low kind of investment as such. It's not necessarily crazy amounts of money. And I know full well that in a few years, maybe they will go up. They are 151, so they're guaranteed that there is a large nostalgic value to them. Yes, they are Japanese, so sometimes we find they can be a little bit lower than the English set. Again, I'm not too concerned with that. I'm not necessarily going in to try and make a crazy loads amount of money. And that's another thing when it comes to the investment side. How much are you looking to make? Are you trying to make 150% on your market retail? Are you looking for a 10x, a 2x? What is the kind of profits that you want to make? Or is it like me that you just like collecting stuff? To be honest, I'd happily just buy one of each product and just have them as a collection more so than an investment. And that's the big thing that you've got to be looking at, because everybody here will think I can just buy the boxes, 10 years, they'll go up, beautiful. Now, they could. They most definitely have a very high chance that they will at least be appreciating in value as we go through the years. And if you are looking for a really long hold, a decade, 2, 3, 4, you want to hand this down generationally, then yes, there is a likely chance that it does continue to be a very sought after market. And I think that should be very clear that when we look at the sets that Pokemon are still announcing for even next year, the ones they're bringing out right now, there is a lot still going into this, and I don't see it slowing down anytime soon. So that's going to be already a big tick in the box that I think, as long as you're not necessarily going on one product at one point. For instance, if I was to buy 100 Twilight Masquerade, they could go up in value, but realistically, I don't think they're going to be anywhere near vintage once they hit, say, like 20 years old. I just don't see some of them hitting that levels. And the big thing that you've got to remember when it comes to investments right now is, if you're thinking it, everybody else is thinking it. When we saw the absolute blow up of Vintage, Jungle, Rocket, Fossil, it wasn't necessarily because everybody had a random box that they've just kept. Some people forgot they even opened or didn't open packs. That is the biggest thing, is it was stumbled upon, not necessarily by accident, but by just being slightly hoardish. It's just one of them things. Nowadays, we find a lot of people with a lot of collections. They may have bought a whole case of Team Up. That means that there is going to be multiple people, collectors, investors, with a crazy amount of stock. And also Pokemon will definitely increase the stock as well. So where we look at something like first edition, it's not necessarily a thing anymore. Whether they could bring that back on something, I can imagine like a 30 years of Pokemon, they could bring back a 30 years special first edition guaranteed. And you know full well, it's going to be straight out the gate high prices, it's going to be hoarded like crazy, and it probably will go up eventually, but the prices that you're going to have to pay will be extortionate. And that is what you kind of have to deal with when it comes to them. So that's kind of just a brief information on just investing in general. Let me know if you've got any comments down below. Another thing to look at if you are looking at specific cards, the one kind of expertise I don't really have is PSA graded cards. I think for me, they are very much short flips in my understanding. Yes, you can hold them and sometimes they go up in value, but like we've seen with the Moonbryon, there is a lot of people with them now. And also the card printing is getting better. So we're seeing a lot more 10s, and that's always a good thing to have a look at, is how many 10s truly is there? Because if you've got a card that's got 2,500 10s compared to, say for instance, maybe 5 years ago, a card that's got 5 recorded, you know which one's going to have the more kind of rate of want. Because we know we could probably get a Moonbryon that's a 10. And most definitely the values will shift up and down. PSA graded, Ace graded, they all have their own merit of kind of how much the actual community sees them. And to be honest, when it comes to graded cards, I wouldn't even be able to offer any advice because I don't personally collect them. I get the want for them, but I'm more into collecting every single card rather than necessarily a slab. And even though I do think they are pretty cool and the value on them is very cool to be capitalized in a PSA 10, a PSA 9. For me, I would only want the 10s, so I know full well that I don't really want to get into that. Now, the final bit that I'm kind of going with here is if you are looking at specific sets, maybe you are looking to buy one of each card, maybe a few of a card. The good thing to look at, and especially when investing in a set or in a card, is looking at a specific Pokemon. You want the fan favorites, Pikachu, Charizard, Umbreon, pretty much most of the Eevee evolutions. You want then potentially a Mewtwo card. You're looking at then mainly starters as well, like a Blastoise, Venusaur for the older generation, and then some of the newer generations. For instance, if we was to look at, let's go for, I'm trying to think of any good ones because we know Charizard's going to be a big one. If we go into Scarlet and Violet, you have a look down the sets. Obviously, we're looking more towards the special arts more so than anything. I don't think many of any EX or any card like that will ever hit a major value. It's all about the special arts. So if we're kind of looking across and we think, you know what, we're looking at a Riolu, a Lucario. Could be a fan favorite. He's definitely got a few nice cards. Is he going to be the number one? I doubt it. Predominantly, you are looking for the Charizard cards, if anything. And if you do go over to the Poke Collect or Poke Collector? I don't know. This site, whatever it is. Copy that and there you go. If you type in here, like for instance Charizard, it will show you all the Charizards in order. So we haven't had one since Lost Origin, which makes no sense. It should be in order because we've had some in Scarlet and Violet. So unless that's just been updated for some reason, I don't know why. Normally they are in complete order. I don't know why these are backwards. But for instance, we look at something like the promo cards, we look at Crown Zenith. Even if we look at something like this, we know is quite cheap at the moment. You could potentially go for a couple of him and see if the value does slightly increase in the future. Whether it does is completely an interesting one to see if it really goes into that level. But it's kind of looking at a collection of a specific card. For instance, if we go a bit further down now, we look at something like, I think if we go a bit too far back, you might not see the one. But say we look at something like a Charizard GX. I can imagine this was still quite hard to pack. It is 211, so it's not necessarily a special. Oh, it's a promo card as well. But for instance, that one's technically 12, 650, 24, depending on the condition. That is just a promo card you would have been able to buy in a box. Whether you wanted to, whether you could have bought it in the box, I don't know what box it came from. That's going to be the big question. But say we go to page 2. If we look, I'm trying to think of kind of one. So we got 376 for Detective Pikachu. You've got a standard Charizard and Team Up. Again, it's nothing too special yet. We're looking at £4. If you bought 10 at 40p, if it was ever that price, that's a very good return in profit if you are looking for the quick ones, or at least the ones that are easier. There's a guarantee that you know a Charizard is going to go up in price. So fan favorite cards are always going to be a fan favorite no matter what. Of course, it always will be. There's definitely no ways about it. Generations, that looks a pretty sick card, but again, it depends on where you can actually get it from. This one is from the Generations set. As we see the Charizard EX here, we've got the Mega Charizard as well, so we know full well that was going to be at least a semi-decent value. Whereas then we look at this one, £8, 21.79. You could pick one of them up and just have a binder of Charizards. You could buy a couple of them and then see in the future whether they go up. Buying a Venusaur, it's going to be at £4.50. It's a very decent card design, obviously dependent on the level of kind of condition of the card is going to play a massive factor in them. So it is one of them things that I would say is worth putting a lot of research in. And when it comes to investing, like I said, you've got to know the wants between collecting and investing. Because if you're investing, you've got to spend a lot of time researching the cards, knowing the trends, seeing whether it's actually worth holding a booster box that is modern and how long for, and also knowing what's your price point. If I, for instance, had the sealed 151s, I've got 2 of them, if they were to go up to £500 a box, whether they do, would I sell them then or hold on for the long haul? Do you want £1,000? Do you see a point where you're gonna go, okay, I'll get rid of that now? So when it comes to it, I think you've just got to be very smart with it. If you are looking to just make money and maybe you don't have the interest in the actual collecting side of it or Pokemon in general, then there is plenty of other investing tips that you can go with. You can go with just generic stocks. You could have businesses you could put money into. You could have a startup business, which is going to be the biggest investment you could make. There is loads of other options that you can go for that maybe not necessarily have more confirmed profits, but they may be more steady profits that you could go with instead. So let me know down below, have you got any investments in there, or have you got any portfolio anywhere else? Apart from that, make sure you like and subscribe. Peace.